Hello, everybody. Thank you for being with us today. Before Ritu dives into their presentation, I do want to talk a little bit about our undocumented student services on campus. So let me share my screen. All right, are you able to see that? Awesome. All right, so to get started, we do want to talk about the different folks that are part of our team. I know we are a small team, but we do the best we can to be able to support as many students as possible. The first person I want to introduce is Daniela Jimenez. She's our program consultant. She, her, ella pronouns. And she works a lot with the collaborations across campus. So whenever anybody's interested in collaborating with us in any types of workshops or events, that is who you can communicate with. We also have Karina Avalos. She is our academic counselor, specifically meets with USS students, but can also meet with other EOP students, she, her pronouns. And currently she is out on leave, but she will be returning soon. So that is another person of contact. You also have myself as the assistant director of USS, she, her, ella pronouns, and I've been with the program for about 4 months. And I am also a resource for any questions that staff or students may have or need to get connected to any types of services that we have. And then lastly, we have Ritu, who already introduced themselves. This is the staff attorney through USM. We do collaborate a lot with Ritu to be able to put things like this webinar together. All right, so to dive a little bit deep into our programming, we do have, as I mentioned, our USS counselor. We also have peer mentorship. So we have interns that are also students within the program that can support their peers, provide any advice that they may need or want. We also have quarterly presentations, workshops, and social events. We try to have a good range of them throughout the academic year. So if students are looking for opportunities to be able to connect with other students or other organizations within the campus, this is a great way to stay connected. We have the legal assistance, which we advise for any student or staff that may need the additional support to be able to seek. It is free legal assistance that's provided by Ritu. So for any questions on that, we do have their information towards the bottom, as well as you can reach us through our email, which is the ab540 at ucsc.edu. And then lastly, we do have multiple types of funding that is available to the students within our program. It goes anything from professional development to emergency cases for different types of students. So if any USS student were to ever be in need or is looking for additional opportunities, this is a great way for them to get connected to those resources. Now, there's other things that the students also have access to. When a student is USS, they're also considered EOP. And so there are services that are provided through the EOP office, such as we have our administrative receptionist that can support with creating an appointment for a student, free printing services, coffee station, testing supplies. We also have a range of opportunities for students to participate in additional workshops or presentations. And then our space is located in the ARC building. There is a study space for students to be able to have some quiet time on the second floor to be able to study or work on anything that they need for their courses. And this is just a map of where we're located. We aren't anywhere near like the central part of campus, so sometimes students can't find our building, but this is how they can find more information about us, and I'll be sharing the presentation afterwards, so you all can have access to that as well. All right, I'll hand it back to Ritu.
Thanks, Jasmine. So I'm going to share my screen. Yes, you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me. Okay, welcome everyone. Now I'm sharing so I can't see anything. Um, So welcome. This is a presentation we've been doing monthly since I think the beginning of this year. And we're talking about know your rights. And basically we're talking about information over fear. So putting information out there about knowing your rights, whether you're directly impacted or you're working with people who are, if you're family members or if you're staff or faculty and would just want to get more information. So we're just going to talk about knowing your rights regarding immigration. So to introduce myself again, my name is Ritu Goswami, and I'm a staff attorney with the UC Immigrant Legal Services Center. We are based out of UC Davis Law School and provide free immigration legal services for students at different UC campuses and their immediate family members, and also staff and faculty for your personal cases. And so I'm the staff attorney serving UC Santa Cruz. I wanted to introduce my small team as well, who are not here, but sending out shout outs. So I have a intern who's an undergraduate intern with collaboration with USS, and that's Dana Alvarez. And she supports me with casework, admin tasks, and also with these workshops. Also, I had the pleasure of working with a law student this past semester who just last week finished her externship, and that is Gabby Sison, and she supported me with client casework and doing legal research. So I wanted to give everyone a content advisory. So I'm going to be talking about scenarios that may be hard to hear. And so please take care of yourselves, breathe, take breaks. This is being recorded, so you can watch it later. We will be sharing the slides, so you don't need to worry about missing content. But yeah, please take care of yourselves. So the goals for this presentation are to understand who's at risk of arrest and detention by immigration, understanding what rights you have if you come into contact with immigration, knowing how to use your rights in the presence of an immigration officer, and then also resources available. So starting out, so who's at risk of arrest and detention? People ask me all the time, reach out to me, can I be deported? So if someone doesn't have status in the US, legal immigration status, yes, they can be deported. However, immigration needs to have reason to believe in order to arrest somebody. So to arrest someone, immigration has to have reason to believe that that person arrested is undocumented or deportable. And so that means either they don't have status or maybe they have status, have committed certain crimes and have become deportable. And so most often who's highest risk or most often immigration arrests happen because immigration already has information about a specific person. They violated their visa, have a final order of removal and were not removed. This was happening a lot with the student visas recently. So if they have information, they can target that particular person. But other times, this happens when immigration gets information from the non-citizen. So the person, the individual, admits to being in the US without status, or is carrying documents that they're a citizen of a different country. I'm going to get into documentation. I know I've been getting a lot of questions about that recently, but there are basically two ways. Either they have information and they're coming to look for someone, or someone admits. And so a big part of this presentation and many Know Your Rights presentations is you have a right to remain silent. You don't need to say where you're from, and I'm going to break that down. So some immigrants are also at greater risk of coming into contact with immigration for certain reasons. So if undocumented immigrants who have committed a crime and undocumented immigrants with a prior deportation order, so that a judge has ordered them deported, and they have not left. And sometimes people don't even know they have a deportation order. So often we're trying to help people figure that out. Also, people at risk are immigrants with status, including lawful permanent residents or green card holders who have been convicted of certain crimes, and then non-immigrant visa holders who have violated the terms of their visa. And so I'm not going to get into this in the presentation, but the non-immigrant visa holders, for example, are student visa holders who did something in violation of the requirements of their visa. So who has rights in the United States? every person in the United States, regardless of their immigration status, has constitutional rights. And what rights do we have? So under the US Constitution, there's the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment states that we have a right against unreasonable searches and seizures. So this means, and I'm gonna get into this, that ICE and law enforcement cannot enter a person's home to conduct a search or arrest without a judicial warrant or permission from the person. So that's a big thing. Once you give permission, they can follow through. So the whole point, again, about remaining silent is to not give permission. Fifth Amendment is the right to remain silent. ICE can only deport you if they have proof you're not a US citizen, your right to due process. So in immigration matters, that means the right to fight your case in front of a judge. And part of this also is that you can refuse to sign documents. You can refuse to give or show documents. The Sixth Amendment is a right to an attorney. Unlike criminal law and immigration law, you have a right to an attorney, but one is not provided for you. So you can find one who's free or you can pay for one. And you also have the right to be advised about how your criminal charges and convictions will affect your immigration. So if you have a criminal case, your criminal attorney needs to work with an immigration attorney to help you navigate both systems to make sure one doesn't affect the other. Because sometimes a criminal attorney is they have their goals of trying to reduce, maybe trying to reduce jail time or trying to do something, but then that might make, and maybe we'll say to plead something, but that may affect somebody's immigration. So it's important that an immigration attorney and a criminal attorney talk with each other. Most public defender offices in California do have an immigration attorney to advise the criminal attorneys. So I'm going to start, I'm breaking down where you have different rights. So I'm going to start with your rights at home. And this can be also applied to rights in the dorm, so where you live. So an immigration officer cannot enter your home unless they have a valid judicial warrant or someone in your house gives them permission to enter, to enter. Immigration officers rarely have this judicial warrant. And I know what I'm going to go through is all over the internet. Like, they rarely have it. They know they're supposed to have it and they'll kind of fake people out, but they rarely have a warrant. They're hard to get. So if immigration's at your door, you have rights. You can keep your door closed. You don't need to answer the door. You can ask through the door why they're there. They may try to trick you into saying that they're the police. They sometimes come really early in the morning and wake people up, so people are kind of confused. You have the right to ask for an interpreter if you don't understand English or the language they're speaking, and you can ask for a warrant. And so if they give you a warrant, you can review it and see if it's actually valid. You can keep your door closed still, so you can have them slide it under the door or hold it up to a window for you to read. So what does a judicial warrant look like? So this is one that's been around. It's from 2014. The main thing is that it's a judicial warrant. It's from a court. It's not from immigration. So if you see on the top, it says Superior Court of California. And here's another example, and this is United States District Court. And so it's issued by a court, and then it should have the name of the person and the address where they want to do the search. And it needs to be signed by a judge. So not an ICE agent or an immigration judge. Immigration judges are called judges, but they are really administrative judges. This would have to be like a judge from a court. So what does an ICE warrant look like? So ICE, if you see like on the top, it says like U.S. Department of Justice, Immigration Nationalization Service, and then warrant of removal. This is just an immigration document. This is not a judicially issued warrant from a judge. If they show up with this, don't let them in. Tell them to come back with a judicial warrant. And so this is another example of an ICE warrant. It's issued by Homeland Security. This is not signed by an immigration officer. It's not signed by a judge. It's signed by an immigration officer. And this one's not even signed. Okay, so if I've had this question, okay, like, you don't want to answer the door, but what if you do? And what if they enter? You still have rights. Do your best to stay calm. Do not run. Don't interfere with or obstruct an officer, because that is an issue. If If you run away or try to stop an officer from doing their jobs, don't physically confront an officer. Also, we really encourage people not to lie or give false documents because that can harm you later. And we encourage you to remember the details of the encounter. So right after, write it down, because that may help you later on. You have the right to remain silent, and then you don't have to answer questions about your citizenship or immigration status. If you do have status, so we keep saying this, but if someone doesn't have status, they don't need to say anything about their status. But if you do have status, you can choose to show your documents. So if you have DACA and you want to show your work permit or your green card, that's your choice. It's kind of like a couple of like two layers. The first is we shouldn't have to, right? It's not our job to tell them what everybody's status is. And I know a lot of US citizens are in solidarity. We don't need to also show anything. So if you want to remain silent, but then given when you're in the moment, you have to do what's best for you and how safe you feel. So if you feel like you would like to show your documents, you can do so. So your rights at work, public spaces. Our campus is also has a lot of public spaces. ICE can enter without a warrant. Private spaces, ICE needs a judicial warrant or the employer's permission to enter. And employers and employees should know their rights. So again, if ICE is ever present, don't run. You can ask if you're under arrest, and then if they say no, then you can leave or you can ask to leave. Otherwise, you have the right to remain silent and just ask for an attorney. And as far as public and private spaces, this is determined by, so on our campus, for example, it's determined by the lawyers for the it's determined by the employer. So for the UC campus council can determine those spaces. People are asking about ICE presence at the UC. So every UC campus has a protocol for responding to ICE enforcement, and most of them involves reaching out to campus council or the UC Police Department. So for our campus, UCSC, the protocol is to contact for students. So if students see any ICE enforcement, should contact the dean of students. And for staff, you should contact campus council if you have any questions. And if there is an ICE officer asking for information or asking for access, you can do all these things. You can ask for a warrant. But even if there is a warrant, you can ask campus council. Campus council is your attorney, so you can ask to have your attorney there to look at the documents, and let campus council know what is happening. Okay, your rights while driving, get a lot of questions if you can get pulled over. So we want to distinguish between the police and immigration. So police, that's usually the state, California police can ask for your driver's license and registration because you need that to drive. But they cannot ask about your immigration status. So if you're not sure, ask to see their badge, to see if they're a police officer or an ICE officer. We see ICE officers sometimes pretending to be police officers. If you don't have a driver's license, you can park your car and have a licensed driver pick you up. So you can stop driving at that time. If you're undocumented and immigration stops you, you still have the right to remain silent. And again, we encourage you not to give false information. So if you have lawful status and ICE contacts you while driving, again, you may choose to show your documents, which is like your permanent resident card or your green card, work permit, or other documentation. Your rights in the street. So this is again a public place. So if you encounter immigration in the street, don't run. You do have a right to ask if you're being detained. If you are, you can follow the instructions. If you're not, asked to leave. So kind of like, am I being arrested? Am I being detained? Then that's how you can decide what to do. So if they say no, then you can say, I'm going to leave, or may I leave? You're not required, you have a right to remain silent. You're not required to answer questions, and can just say that you don't wish to answer the question. So then, as I talked about, like the two layers, so that's the goal. We want, all advocates want for people to be able to walk away and not give information to immigration. But if it does escalate to an arrest, please stay calm, be polite, don't interfere with the officer, don't physically confront an officer, don't lie or give false documents. You can continue to exercise your right to remain silent. You do also have a right to remember the details, but you have a right to record with your camera. There is an app with the ACLU where you can just start recording and that data will be sent directly to the ACLU. You do have that right, just like any arrest. So then if you're taken into custody, if you are arrested by an immigration officer and you're taken into custody, you may be taken to the nearest immigration processing center. They'll likely search your person and anything you have. So this is the question I've been getting lately is like, oh, we're supposed to be silent, but then also it says to carry things with you. So how does that work? So we try to not be detained, right? So you could have the documents on you, but you don't need to show them. You don't need to say where you're from. But if you are taken into custody, that's the time where you're going to want to have your documents because, I mean, they will take them from you, but at that point, you may want to explain your status or show your documents of your status, or if you have something pending. They'll likely take your fingerprints and ask more questions. So you don't need to answer questions, but you may choose to at that point. Um, because you want to you want to be released at that time. So ICE has a right to issue a charging document if they believe that you're undocumented or in violation of a status. And then ICE and immigration has a lot of discretion to decide whether they'll hold you in detention or release you. So the first 24 hours is very important. And during that time, it's important to call an attorney, call our center, call me, because at that time, any immigration officer can let somebody go on their discretion. And so, especially if you're a student or even a staff, and you have a lot of equities in your role, it's important that you're able to talk with the immigration officer, talk with an attorney to see if whether you can be released. So, more rights when you're taken into custody. So you always have the right to remain silent. You have the right to call a lawyer or your family. So you will have the right to a phone call. That phone call may not be confidential, so we encourage you when you make that call to your lawyer or to your family to not talk so much about your case. Again, don't start saying where you're from or anything like that, but do tell somebody where you are because often it's hard to locate people. So say where you are, whatever information you have um, about your location or anything about what's happening. You have the right to refuse any documents. We do encourage you not to sign any documents without consulting with an attorney. Um, you may be eligible to be released on bond, which is kind of like a bail. Um, and then that has changed a little bit. So I'll talk about that in the next slide. You should ask to see a judge and ask for a bond. So this goes back to that discretionary stuff I was talking about in the last slide, is that there's discretion, like they can do a lot of things. So they can detain you, they can also release you on bond, which is, a payment to make sure that you do appear for court. So you can still be deportable, but be able to be released and go back to school or do whatever you need to do as long as you're not a danger. So you want to ask for that. But if you do have a prior deportation order, existing law, like they can remove you without any of that because there's already an order, you've already had that opportunity, unless you fear returning to your country. So if you're afraid of being hurt, you have to state that clearly and repeatedly and ask to speak with an attorney about that because they often don't listen. So even if later things don't go well, at least you asked for it. So the only way for them to know that you're afraid of going back is for you to say. So whether you have a deportation order or not, you need to say that you're afraid and just keep saying you're afraid. I want to speak with an attorney. I want to have an interview. I'm afraid to return to my country. Okay, so there's something called expedited removal, and this is where it's a rapid deportation process without the right to appear in front of a judge to fight your case. So this has been expanded. So this has always been happening like close to the border, in certain situations where you can be removed without having any due process, essentially. But that has been expanded, and so now it's important. It's been expanded to people who have been here less than 2 years. So this again goes back to carrying documents. So we encourage people to carry documents that they've been in the U.S. for 2 or more years. So this can be mail, a lease, school records, not court records, work records, pay stubs, medical records, things like that. And then carry with you evidence of your status. So if you have something pending, like an asylum, or you've appealed your case, carry that information with you. And that's what I was saying. If you do get detained, you want to have that with you, so then you're not deported immediately, and that you will have time. You'll be able to remain in the U.S. to fight your case. So you can share that evidence when you've been taken into custody, but the first step is to remain silent, with the exception of asking to speak with a lawyer, or saying that you're afraid to return to your country. So the new law that I mentioned to you, this is pretty recent, is the Lake and Riley Act. And so this allows some immigrants to be detained without an opportunity for release from custody while their immigration case is pending. So this is kind of when I talked about the discretion to be released on bond only, and you would only not be allowed to be released is if you were a danger, but that has been expanded. Because it used to be very dangerous, very serious crimes, but they basically expanded it that now if you have an arrest or charged with or convicted or admit to committing burglary, theft, shoplifting, assault of a law enforcement officer, you will not be eligible for a bond, and it's a mandatory detention. So this does not apply to people who are green card holders or legal unlawful permanent residents, people who are granted refugee status, or people who entered on a visa. So I went through a lot of information. Thanks for hanging in there. I'm going to play a video that basically it's a review of everything we talked about. And I'm realizing that I'm going to stop share and share again, because then the sound issue. One moment. That was not it. Okay.
It was 5:30 a.m. when ICE came to Esther's apartment. ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The agents lied to Esther, saying they were police officers investigating a crime, and her husband, Alexei, was a potential witness. "Is Alexei home?" they asked innocently. Now, Esther's gut told her she should cooperate, but she remembered something she'd heard on the radio. ICE had been making early morning sweeps using tricks like this to get people to open their doors. Esther remembered she had rights. ICE may try similar tricks at your home. They may say they're looking for a friend, relative, or roommate. But do not be fooled, and do not open the door. Instead, remain calm and be polite. Tell the agents that you'd like to see a warrant and their ID. Ask them to slip these documents under the door or hold them up to the peephole. Without a warrant signed by a judge, ICE is not allowed to enter or search your home. ICE usually won't have a warrant, but they may lie and say they do, or show you something else that looks official. So look carefully and take pictures of whatever they show you. If they refuse to share any of these documents, then ask them for their card and contact information. Do not show the agents anything or say anything except, "I do not consent for you to enter my home. I do not want to talk to you without a lawyer present. Please leave." Now, ICE won't always listen to you and may enter your home using force. But saying these things might help you in court, even if the agents don't listen. The other videos in this series will help you understand your rights if ICE enters your home or arrests you. Esther and Alexei knew their rights, and the officers left. This is all scary, but remember, we have rights. After an encounter with ICE, take notes about what happened, writing down as many details as you can remember. This information might be helpful in future immigration proceedings. It's important that you and your loved ones are prepared for encounters with ICE, and that you have a plan for what to do if one of you is arrested, including information about who to call. If ICE comes to your home, remember, you have rights. Do not open the door. Ask to see a warrant signed by a judge. Tell them you do not consent to them being at your home. Please leave. If a loved one is arrested, you should be able to locate them at locator.ice.gov.
I was trying to be all clever. Anyway, thank you for that. Okay. So that was a review of everything. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, where you can find those videos. And there's more of them. But I wanted to talk about preparing. So the biggest thing is know your rights, but also preparing. So making a plan, and that really helps in these times of anxiety and uncertainty. So how can you prepare? So make a plan to follow if you're detained by ICE. And a big thing is identify who to call. So have a contact person, and this is separate from your attorney. You should have an attorney, you should have our center's number, but also um, someone in your, like a friend or a family member who is documented, who can be that point person, and let them, like let everybody call that person, memorize their phone number, and then that person will have a plan about what to do. Collect and secure your important documents. So often people don't know where their documents are, and it's going to be harder to get them when you're detained. So know where your IDs, birth certificate, marriage, medical, financial, and you can share these with a lawyer or with your contact person and keep them safe. You can keep them digitally somewhere. Plan who's going to tend to young children. I'm hearing this a lot with students who have younger siblings, and they may come from mixed status families, and often a child is at school and something may happen to the parents. So I'm going to talk about this in the resources, but having a plan for someone to take care of the young children, and then also other responsibilities, financial responsibilities, who's going to take care of that. Making sure a trusted adult knows how to contact an immigration attorney, or how to find legal assistance. I wanted to tell you about regional rapid response networks. So these are usually not attorneys, they may be, but these are trained volunteers who actually are will respond in the moment. And so there's one in Santa Cruz County, and this is to handle things right then. And we've seen things where rapid response networks can come in and actually help enforce, like if there's a raid going on, help enforce the rights of the immigrants, and saying that they're not going to speak, they have a right to remain silent, things like that. And so this is really helpful for short-term immediate assistance. Save money for legal and other expenses, and share your plan. Can also carry red cards. So I think by now everyone knows about red cards. They are all over campus. We have them at the ARC, and also at the resource centers and different places on campus. And these are literally red cards. And in the resources, I have a place where you can print them out if you would like your own. And they have basically what we just talked about constitutional rights. So on one side, it says like what your rights are, and then the other side, like what you can say, because people often don't know what to say, kind of like, I have a right to remain silent, I'm not going to answer your questions, I would like an attorney, things like that. And you don't need to say the things. We talked about not opening the door. You can slide this under the door. You can hand this to an ICE officer. They know what it is. But it's also pretty empowering to have that. So as I mentioned, you can identify a rapid response network in your area, memorize and carry their number. Again, don't carry documents with false information. And it says, or from a different country. That's complicated because your documents that show you have status may also show you're from a different country. But if you don't need to carry documents, like if you're undocumented and you're carrying a passport from another country, that could be, that is evidence that you're from another country, so you don't need to do that. So carry some other document, so a school ID, your work permit, just something, because once you carry like that foreign passport or other document, you're basically admitting you're a non-citizen. And then back to what we were talking about, documents that you've lived in the US for at least 2 years, the last 2 years. So memberships, utility bills, making sure that documents don't have false information is very important. So above all, remember that you have rights, including the right to continue your education. In California, we have that right. Your children have a right to go to school. Don't let fear deter you from your activities. Don't give up services that you're otherwise eligible for. And then this sentence, the probability of immigration arrest is still relatively low for most people. I still stand by that. It's a really bad time. And we're hearing there's a lot of fear putting out on purpose, a lot of fear being put out there, but there's not much, can't let that fear stop you from living your life. So if you're prepared and you've done everything like, and you don't have a criminal record, or the things we talked about in the beginning, the probability is relatively low because there's just a lot of people. So knowing your rights and having a plan is the best defense. I added a section this month about legal permanent residents because in the past month, lots of legal permanent residents have been coming to me about their rights, both students and staff, faculty, especially around travel. So I added a few slides here, but I do encourage people to reach out to me for consultation because every case is different. But so a legal permanent resident, this is someone who's a green card holder, and LPRs have rights, including authorization to work and live in the US, the right to travel outside of the US and within the US, ability to access some public benefits. And if you remember one thing, is that lawful permanent residence is an immigration status that only an immigration judge can take away. The other ways you can give it up yourself. So basically you can give it up yourself, but you can't like an ICE officer or immigration officer can't take it away. You have to go to court, and a judge has to remove that status from you, has to deport you and remove your status. And so that's important to know, because if you do sign something, this applies to not only undocumented people. So if you sign something, you may be giving up your status when you do have a right to also go to court. The law does require legal permanent residents to carry proof of their status, which is your green card, which may or may not be green. And LPRs are free to travel, but they maybe have considered to abandon their status or have trouble naturalizing to become a US citizen if they leave for more than 6 months. So if you're going to be traveling for more than 6 months, speak with an attorney. And this is the form I was telling you, the form I-407, which is states that you voluntarily give up your green card. I've heard many instances where immigration officers are asking people at the airports, threatening people, where you're going to be detained. But if you just sign this, you can go back, you can be released. But you're giving up your status. So if you're asked to sign that, ask to speak with a lawyer and see a judge. You may be detained, but you do not need to sign that. Again, what I've been saying, LPRs can lose their status because of certain criminal convictions, and this often can come to light when you're traveling. So when you're coming back from a trip and you're being questioned, they could find that information out, and maybe right now they're looking more into that. There is more emphasis on screening right now. And I wanted to remind people that it's still a federal crime to possess marijuana, even if it's legal here in California or otherwise. And so if you do have a criminal record, basically anything on your record, please consult with an attorney before traveling. And here are the resources that I wanted to let you know about. And we're going to be sharing these slides so you can have these resources. The We Have Rights are ACLU videos. I played one of them, and they're available in multiple languages, and they're really short. And I think this is a great resource that you can play in your classrooms or for your family. And they're really accessible. The red card that we talked about, so they're available for UC affiliates on campus. And then there's this app, the KYR Know Your Rights for Immigrants app, and that's what's on the bottom, the image. And it's an app on your phone, and it kind of like if you're it's great where you learn everything, like I'm telling you everything in the moment, what are you gonna do? So the app basically you can choose the language and it'll speak for you, and it'll say, I would like an attorney. I choose to be silent. You may not enter my home. It has all of that on there. So that's useful, and this QR code is for that app. Um, and I guess I just noticed this. In the case of an emergency, you can announce your rights and send a text to a list of contacts. So there's that. This packet, the Immigrant Legal Resource Center, is a wonderful resource. They have a packet about safety planning, like I talked about especially caring for children. So you don't need to, like, for example, go to court and do a guardianship or even a power of attorney. You might choose to do that, but there are caregiver affidavits, which is basically like a permission slip, and that's really helpful for school and medical care. So if somebody does need to step in, they can enroll the child in school, pick up the child from school, take them to the doctor, and that's something that's really short-term assistance that a family may need. So if you're doing that and having that ready like now and having the parent give permission now is very helpful. This is the detainee locator website. And back to the rapid response hotlines, there are trained legal volunteers who can help to respond to immigration arrests. And for UC affiliates, you can contact me, and my information's coming. Yeah. So the UC Immigrant Legal Services Center serves the UC campuses, which are here, including UC Santa Cruz. And you can just go to our website and figure out how to book an appointment through there. If it's urgent, you can email or call. My information, if you click through, my information's on there. If you're with the California State University system, there are also services, or in the community colleges. And if you're not affiliated with any of that, there's the National Immigrant Legal Services Directory right there to find an immigration attorney. Oh, no, our website's on top. I just noticed that, usim.law.ucdavis.edu. And now we can do questions. I saw one question, and I answered it from Regina. Did you have any other? Did that answer your question? Or I can review it. So Regina's question was back to what I was saying. Students can contact the dean of students and staff contact campus council, but what about grad students? So yeah, grad students are kind of this hybrid where they're both staff and student. And I would say it depends on the context. The short answer is they can contact both. But the point of contacting campus council is like someone needs a lawyer for their role as staff. So like maybe someone's trying to enter a space or is trying to ask for information. There's been a lot of questions about what information do I have to give. That's when you would call campus council, or just to let them know. Like if you're not impacted yourself, just to let campus council know what's happening on campus. But the dean of students is to serve the students. And so that is, if it's about them personally, and they want support as a student, then they can contact dean of students. Really, if something happens, I think both would say it's fine to contact them both, but just letting you know what their roles are. And then I think there's another question.